Hello everyone, welcome back to another Strategoi video. Ryan here with a break in our usual service, I guess you could say, we've had over the past 2 weeks. This is a break from the break. Um, if you have been paying close attention to what we've been talking about, it's been a transition period for me. I'm officially able to stay living in the Netherlands. I have a job here that's actually wonderful, and I've just started that job a week and a half ago. And in addition, I was on vacation back in the States with my girlfriend, and that was lovely. But it's been a pretty dry spell, and that's occurring at the same time as Jonas also being on vacation and then gearing back up for his teaching regimen with the start of a new school year. So we haven't really had a lot of content lately, but I wanted to get something out while I could. I'm still managing the new work-life balance, so hopefully we will continue getting videos out while we can. But I'll get that rhythm sorted out one day or the other sometime soon, hopefully. But anyway, this is a continuation of our OBR Battletome analysis case study. I'll go over the details in a bit, but before I forget, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff to help keep the channel growing. And, it always encourages us to keep going too, though that's certainly not why we've had a dip in service lately. Otherwise, I wanted to point out that this video was made a while ago, and evidently it was recorded while a dishwasher was about to be going on, and I wasn't aware of that. So my excuse is if you think you're crazy and that's your dishwasher in the background, especially if you're listening to some headphones, it is not. I had to check a couple times, excuse me, at my own place to make sure that wasn't the case. And then otherwise, I wanted to mention that there's a part right before the end of the video where the Battletome in the page in question went out of focus for about 2 minutes. So I just kind of took a still shot of that page and then just overlaid it with my audio from that section. So my excuses for that. Anyway, let's get on to the content. All right, so as I was mentioning, this is a continuation of the OBR case study for Battletome analysis. We started by covering the battle traits and then moved on to the battle line units, sub-factions, spell lore, and then the enhanceable heroes was the last thing that we covered in the series, which was essentially going over the Mortisan units and the Liege Cavallos, all of which are non-unique and are heroes that can therefore take command traits or artifacts. And so this enhancement section, even though technically spell lore is enhancement too, is concerned with the things that those enhanceable heroes were able to take. So it'll be a relatively short one. And then, of course, coming up soon, hopefully, we're going to be rounding out the series with discussion of the remaining war scrolls, the core battalions, if I think there's one maybe, and Grand Strats, battle tactics, and then a series of FAQs that have occurred in the past few months. While I'm on that topic, it's worth pointing out that this video series really is dating itself at this point because the whole point was to record it before I had actually heard anything about the OBR book, really. And so I intentionally kept myself in the dark so that I could better deliver content showing what it looks like when someone's reading a Battletome for the first time. Well, as anyone who's been paying attention to tournament results and just playing against OBR people recently, a lot of this is, has been proven to either be right or wrong, especially with a pair of FAQs and maybe a third one that's coming down the pike soon, which I'm still trying to stay relatively ignorant of so I can do authentic recordings of these, but that's getting increasingly harder to do. And so things like Null Myriad, I don't think I really said that Null Myriad would become the big spell or the big sub-faction, but of course it has proven to be that. For that 2-up spell ignore. I did say, of course, something along the lines of if the meta goes really magic heavy, then, that could be a thing. And of course, that's where we've landed. Now, I don't know if that's actually what makes Null Myriad so strong. It certainly helps. but you could argue that it's just the book is really good, especially with bringing back all those Immortus Guard and I guess Necropolis Stalkers if you really wanted to. So anyway, but let's get on to the content at hand. I'm going to do the slide here that covers just a real quick analysis. I'm not going to go through every point, but if you've been following along, you know what's going on. Basically, this doesn't necessarily have to be about OBR, but this is a case study of it where it's just a chance for people to see how someone who reads all the Battletomes, like literally owns all of them, and then writes in them and then does a lot of analyses, would actually approach doing so for the first time upon sight. So again, I was trying to be as ignorant of the process as possible. All right, without further ado, here's the content.
All right, for some of you, this is much more important than it might seem to me for how long I've waited, but I really do think this is the right time to kind of process this stuff because I have a decent sense. I know what all the battle line units do, and I know what all of the unnamed heroes do. So I know the spell lore, I know the terrain piece, I know the endless spells, of course the normal abilities, the faction abilities, the sub-faction abilities. I'm just missing, and I know what Nagash does because he's, I read it in the Soulblight book, and I'm assuming it's exactly the same in this book as they tend to do with the god characters that are shared between factions. So, looking at command traits. Okay, so I don't like how they do this because they'll name it, and then they sometimes will have a restriction here that's also in bold, which makes it look like it's a new command trait. So I'm actually going to block these out so that they're separable. And some of you might say that that's totally unnecessary, but I do it for me. So we got six of these guys. Now, it's OCR Bone Reaper's General only, and we just covered all the ones that can take it. So let's look at what we got. Wizard only. I believe that was 4 out of 5. In your hero phase, this is Dark Acolyte. If the first spell this general attempts to cast in that phase is successfully cast, that spell cannot be unbound. Okay. Here's my thoughts on this. Here are my thoughts. I wasn't like blown over by the spell lore, and I haven't seen a single spell on a war scroll that could be taken by this, like, a non-unique hero that also makes me think, oh my god, I've got to get that spell out. The endless spells were pretty cool, but I don't know if they were that critical. And then maybe if you had an endless spell, like a generic endless spell that you really wanted to get out there, like maybe cogs or something. I just don't see this as needing that magic heavy of a thing, but maybe I'm missing something. But it's a cool ability. Some armies would love to have this. Tzeentch would love to have it. Hell, Lumineth would love to have it. A lot of armies would love to have it, but I just don't know if this is the one. But anyway, all right. Show of superiority. While this general is on the battlefield, roll a dice before your opponent spends any command points to use a command ability. On a 5-up, your opponent must spend 2. Oh, this is great. 2 command points to issue a command instead of 1. It doesn't steal it, but it does. So 1/3 of the time, 1/3 of the time, they're going to have to be offered to say, you don't have to give up the one you just tried to spend because it's technically before it's spent. But are you sure you want to do this? Because now it's 2. And they're not going to know until they've shown their hand of what they want to do. Now, 5-up is not often enough for me to be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But it's not bad. Bark Mornar in KO has something like this. Lady Alinder has something like this. Skaven's got something like this, I think. So it's not exactly the same, but it's this kind of stealing your command points or making them worse. It's kind of a total eclipse kind of thing. So I don't hate it at all. I feel like that's tactically way more interesting than this wizard having a potentially non-unbindable spell. All right, Mighty Archaeosian. Okay. Ignore negative modifiers to save rolls for attacks that target this general. This is the better version of Ethereal. Cool. That said, none of those guys seem to be like they needed to be protected that hard. The best person clearly to put this on is the Liege Cavallos, because he's got a 3-up save. So you just bump him up to give him a +1, and then there's nothing they can do. Like he's just sitting on a 2-up. That's pretty cool. But how much do you really need to run that guy? Like, that should be an artifact for that guy, you know? Are you really going to take that instead of shutting down their command point usage? I don't know. All right. Crafted from beast bone. After this general is fought for the first time, at the start of each battle round, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of this general's weapons for the rest of the battle. The effect is cumulative. Okay, so this is like Dexessa, the non-wizard version of the twins from Slaanesh, where it doesn't turn on until they've actually fought. And then at the start of each battle round thereafter, you get to add 1 to attack's characteristic. Now, here's the thing. The 5 options that can take this don't want to be in combat. And they're not really great in combat. This is bad. It looks like it's definitely hero hammery. And keep in mind, it wouldn't apply to the mount of either of the 2 guys that have mounts. I know it's easy to forget that, but it's a command trait or an artifact. Those don't work. This is bad. Those guys don't want to be in combat, and they're slow. And except for the guy, he's only got 10-inch movement though. And you don't want to just toss your general straight up into I'm gonna die range if he doesn't have this one. You really want to have these 2. This should be an artifact as well. Yeah, okay. Not good. All right, Aura of Sterility. Subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target friendly OCR Bone Reapers units holding than 12. Now this is good. I'm going to tell you why I think this is good. And this shows a little bit of my playstyle. It's not just as a Johnny guy, but also as the spike part of me, the competitive part of me. I like command traits to feel like sub-faction abilities. I like them to feel like light sub-faction abilities where, like in 2nd edition, they kind of were. Some of the best sub-factions, the obligatory command trait you had to take sometimes was actually good. So this is a bubble that impacts not only the bearer, but everyone around him. And -1 from hit and wound rolls for shooting attacks. And imagine, this is also when you charge in. So even if they've somehow got a +1 on Unleash Hell, they're back to -1 and -1 to wound. This is a good ability. Now, granted, it's on your general, but you can keep your general behind your main lines, or you can put it on the Liege Cavallos. So these command traits alone are already increasing my value assessment. Maybe not as good as Lyria or Thrall for the Liege Cavallos, but I still think he's a little overpriced, but he's definitely the best target for a lot of this. I still think this is the better one, but I could see Aura of Sterility really nice. Being really nice. Okay, last one, Diversionary Tactics. Subtract 3 from charge rolls for enemy units that attempt to charge within 12 inches of this general. Okay. So here's my thought on that. The problem is, a lot of times your general is not going to want to be in the front lines. Again, all these are kind of asking your general to be like a target. And by putting him in the front, you're maximizing this 12-inch bubble. So like, let's say you put him behind a whole row of guys. Well, then they can actually be, outside his 12-inch bubble while still being halfway decently near some other guys. So you got to kind of, to get the most out of it, you got to put him towards the front of where they're trying to charge. And then -3, so like, okay, let's say they're within 3 inches. They're just outside 3, right? That means they need to roll a 6 to get it, which is not bad to turn a 3-inch charge, which is basically guaranteed, into, it could fail. And it definitely gets worse from there. It's good, but I don't know. I still think the command point thing might be worth the swinginess. I get that that's swingy, but it can make a big difference unless they have a shit ton of command points like you do in this army. So if I had to pick, I'm going with either Show Superiority, Aura of Sterility, and then maybe Diversionary Tactics or Mighty Archaeosian. But these are definitely my favorite. All right, let's move on to artifacts. So we got 2 columns here. And we're looking at we got generic Ossiarch Bone Reaper hero, so that's all 5, and then the other one is for Mortizan only, so that's 4. Okay, it's interesting they split it that way, because they really just don't have a lot of heroes available to you that aren't Mortizan, so interesting. All right, I'm gonna do one column at a time, which is frustrating with how the camera situation set up, but okay. So, a load of saturation, add 1 to ward rolls. So that's taking it from a, well, this is interesting because it's not necessarily saying add 1 to the Deathless Warriors or whatever. It is doing that. So it's going from a 6 to a 5. And by the way, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then over here, 4 over there, for a total of 8. Okay, but how many do we have in total? Or sorry, this would work with other ward rolls. So for example, Nagash can project a 5-inch, a 5 plus 12-inch Holy Then bubble of 5 plus ward is what I mean. So this would make that a 4 plus. So it's kind of interesting. But again, the heroes that can benefit from this just aren't really selling me on they need to be the one that you do that for. So I don't know. Marrow Pact. Each time the bearer fights, after all of their attacks have been resolved, you can heal up to a number of wounds allocated to the bearer equal to the number of wounds and mortal wounds caused by those attacks that were allocated to enemy units. Yikes. Yeah, again, I don't know how much they really want to be in combat. Their attack profiles weren't amazing except for maybe the Liege Cavallos. They're really stacked. Granted, this is not the Mortizan column, but they're really stacking these towards fighting. And I know that that's what they think this army wants to do, but I'm just really doubting that that's the best place to throw your heroes. Mind Blade. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. I always underline melee here. At the end of the combat phase, if any wounds or mortal wounds caused by attacks made with that weapon were allocated to an enemy hero in that phase and that hero is not slain, that hero cannot carry out heroic actions. Oh, this is stupid. Wow. I'm sorry I'm being so down on this. I haven't listened to any reviews. I have no idea what other people are thinking, but this is one of the worst set of command traits and artifacts for the units in the book that I've seen in a while. So that's at the end of both combat phases, if they attack. So again, it's asking you to be in combat. It's asking you to have done wounds or mortal wounds, and to an enemy hero, which is even less likely that you'll even reach them because there's only so many. They can only have max 6 of them on the field anyway. So what are we even talking about? And just to shut off their heroic actions, they probably have another hero that can do the one heroic action they need to do per turn. Like, yes, the books, the 3rd edition books have been giving, sorry, didn't have that in camera. The 3rd edition books have been doing that for giving people more heroic actions over time. But so that's strong, I guess, if they have a really strong one in their sub-faction or something. But God, that's just, the stars aligning on that is pretty rough. All right. I mean, they're really kind of asking you to buff up this Liege Cavallos and have him go ham, but I just don't see it being his thing. Maybe there's a buff I'm missing from the other heroes I haven't covered. All right, and then lastly, enemy units cannot receive Inspiring Presence command while they're within 3 inches of the bearer. In addition, if an enemy unit fails a battle shock test within 3 inches of the bearer, add D3 to the number. So it's basically a horror ghast. D3 models to the number of models that flee. Again, they got to be in combat. Now, you could put them behind some of your units to shut that off. But remember, we also had at least one unit already that could shut down Inspiring Presence. Well, that was the Morghast, right? Yeah. So, I feel like this is kind of redundant. I'm not crazy about any of these. I'm just going to throw it out there. I guess if you're trying to really protect a guy, then the +1 to ward is not so bad. Let's take a look at what the Mortisans do. Hopefully this will improve my assessment here. Okay, so I'm looking at it, and each one targets, there's one per for each of the 4 Mortisan options, which is kind of nice. And it kind of goes in line with these, like, a lot of things are in 4s in this army, evidently. Maybe that's a theme, I don't know. Like the shrine does, or whatever, the Nexus does 4 different things, and the guys with heads do 4 different things, and there's a lot of modularity, but maybe 4 is just a coincidence because that's how many models they've released at this point. Okay, Soul Reaper, I remember this is the combat-y one. Subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks that target the bear while they are within 3 inches of any enemy units. It'd be better if it subtracted, no, I was going to say he would turn off shooting, -1 to hit. It is turning off shooting, so I'll go ahead and say that, but it's only against him. It really should just be making it -1 to hit against everyone, because you don't really need that guy in combat. He only had a 4+ save, and I believe 5 wounds, so that's a little rough. Again, if you're going to use these things, you need to put them behind people. But of the 4 Mortisans, he's definitely the one that wants to be in combat the most. So, okay. Bone Shaper. This is the one that healed the Immortus Guard and the Necropolis Stalkers better. Could, like, resurrect them. I believe. No. Yeah. I think that's right. Let me just double check. These names are all kind of similar. Yes, I had it right. Okay. Artisan's Key. The Bone Shaper. Before you use the bear's Bone Shaper ability, roll a dice. On a 3+, you can either pick 2 units within 6 inches of the bearer to be affected by the Bone Shaper ability instead of 1, or you can pick 1 unit within 6 inches of the bearer to be affected by the... Okay. It's funny that they've actually worded it that way, because there are plenty of other abilities like the Eidolon of the Seas stacking -1 rend that it's not obvious right away upon reading it that you can stack it in multiple times on one person, but I guess they're just trying to be extra clear about this. And if it were 3, it would be harder to write this out so thoroughly. But okay, I mean, if you're going all in on the Bone Shaper ability, it's not the worst one. Keeping in mind, I haven't loved the artifacts thus far, so all right, I guess that's a little better. It's kind of like in keeping in line with the other first two guys we talked about, the Soul Mason and the Ossifactor. They're both having a way to kind of boost their ability. It's output, so that's kind of cool, I guess, keeping that in line. All right, Bones of the Abyss, Soul Mason. So this was the guy that's the 2-caster, knows the whole lore, and was giving +1 to wound to a certain number of units. Each time the bearer successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the bearer's ossified claws until the end of that turn. Oh, come on. Oh my gosh, they really want you to get in combat with these guys. Let's look. Ossified claws. It's not even a great profile. By adding to attacks, all you're doing is, because the damage isn't multiple damage, so, and it's the mount trait, so it doesn't benefit from the, what's it called? Or it's the mount itself, so it doesn't benefit from exploding hits. It's interesting. This is one of those exceptions where this ability does specifically target the mount. I mean, technically you can cast that spell, like 3 times? What was it again? You could do it, obviously, you're a 2-caster already, so you can do 2 spells, and then you get another chance to do it. And you could do it max another 3 times. It's D3 times. So you're getting... It's possible that he's a 5-caster, which is cool, but... And you could be adding 5 to the attack's characteristic of that ability, which puts him at... it was already 2, so, I mean... Obviously, that's a 2.5 times output. For a profile that wasn't that great. But it's something. But God, why? Why are we throwing these guys into combat? He's only got a 4-up save with 6 wounds. I don't get it. All right, Gothazar Cartouche. This is for the new guy, the Ossifactor. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Ossiarch Bone Reaper units wholly within 9 inches of the bearer. How is this not the obvious choice that you take every single time? It affects your whole army. I thought for sure with the Gothazar name here is only going to be something for them, which would have been cool if you like those units. I don't know how good they are. How is this not the obvious choice out of all of these artifacts? It's buffing your whole army. It's buffing him, but it's not about him. It's not just about him. It's buffing the kind of attacks they want to make. It's not dependent on some spell thing going off. Yes, this is clearly the better choice. I don't see why you would do anything else. Okay, so my quick rundown here is there are a couple decent command traits, and then the only artifact you take is this one. Now that, I mean, Arcane Tome got nerfed. You could give it to the Liege Cavallos. There are a couple things in here that maybe, but again, it's very hero hammery with the Liege Cavallos, or maybe putting your neck on the line with these guys. Maybe the Artisan's Key for the Bone Shaper if you really want to go all in on that ability. Wow. I would be shocked if people weren't saying that this is a disappointing list. It really doesn't lean into what you want the army to do, unless I'm missing something, like I've said. So I'm fully accepting that. Okay, so that's command traits and artifacts. So at this point now, we've covered that, the normal traits, spell lores, the Leech sub-factions. We did the endless spells, we did this terrain piece, we did the pitch battle. We haven't done these 2 pages, the core battalions and the match play stuff. I'm going to save that for the very end, if I do it at all. And then we've got, of course, War Scrolls.
And there you have it. Thanks again, guys, for being patient with the series taking so long, months to get everything out. I've actually re-recorded everything but like maybe 1 or 2 FAQ reactions at this point, and most of it was recorded at the same time a while ago when the book came out. So we'll get around to it sooner than later. I just keep trying to intersperse these videos in between other content so it doesn't just end up spamming everyone's viewership of the channel. That maybe they want to hear more tournament reports or more unit analyses from Jonas or whatever table talks other kind of content that we have coming out. So anyway, again, feel free to like, share, subscribe. Thanks for following the series for as long as you have. It's great to know this is making some kind of impression on some of you guys out there. So thanks again. And until next time, Ryan out.